has their coffee. Then I've got my cup of tea. Of course, being British at 4 o'clock, it's tea, and it made me reflect as well, because this cup I bought just before the end of last year in Australia when I was there for the geoplenary. It came from a small national park between Canberra and Sydney, and that seems such a long time ago. You know, it's almost a different era, isn't it? And it's a bit leads us into what we're going to talk about today, the impact of COVID. This is our third EOcafe on this subject. This time we want to talk about the industry. Just a first word about logistics. Please keep microphones off unless you're a presenter and talking, or I've invited you to pose a question. Secondly, we feel it's good if we can keep cameras on. So if you want to put your camera on, then please do. It makes it a much more social event. And if we have technical difficulties, then we may ask to turn the cameras off. But otherwise, let's go for it. Let's try and see each other a bit. Of course, so it's up to you. The final thing, if you want to ask a question, please put it into the chat, and then I'll try to call you in to ask the question at the appropriate time. But otherwise, it's difficult to know who wants to ask questions. So for today, we have three great representatives from the industry. I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion. Firstly, we have Lucy Kennedy, who's founder, owner, and CEO of Spotted in the UK. Lucy's been doing a great job and has recently been nominated for the We Are the City Rising Star Award. So very good luck to you, Lucy, for that. We have Maciej Krasnowski from Cloudfero from Poland. Maciej is the CEO of Cloudfero, who is also a director of Ersk. And then Pierre-Alain Bosque from Airbus, also an Ersk director. And Pierre-Alain is head of sales in the geointelligence part of Airbus Defence and Space. So we tried to put together a balanced panel. We have balance in gender. Our survey indicates roughly a 2-to-1 presence in the sector between male and female. A geographic spread from UK, France and Poland. And of course, most importantly, some might disagree, but a balance of size of companies, so ranging from the very small through to the very large. So I think we're going to have an interesting discussion. It's fair to say that COVID has caught us all by surprise. As I've just mentioned, from Australia, there was absolutely no indication of this until 4 months ago. We started to get some indication that there might be something coming. 2 months ago, we all went into lockdown. Most of the European countries went into lockdown, with direct impact on many businesses. It's fair to say that our sector is probably not as badly affected as some. Although that's not true for all, and I'm sure that Pierre-Alain will enlighten us a little bit on that later. So at Ersk, we decided to have a discussion with our members and to understand how the impact of the crisis was, what the impact was having on their business. So as a start off, what I want to do is just go through 3, 4 slides, just giving you the first flavour of the results of our survey. We will publish something in due course, but we're midway through the survey. So talking to member companies about how they're coping during the current crisis, and finding that members are adjusting as well as could be expected. What a sort of useful term that is. They're seeing an impact on new business development and relying on longer term public sector and R&D contracts. But let's look a little bit more in detail. at that. So if we can have the next slide, Natasha. So we asked them how they've adjusted. Nearly 2/3 said they'd adjusted to work from home. A third were talking about how it had some impacts and reduced productivity on the staff. But only 9% said they'd had a really direct impact with staff off ill, not specified whether it was ill due to the corona, but nevertheless staff off ill or out of work. So they found that they had a loss of the sort of the coffee bar, the interactions that take place in the in offices around the coffee bar, you know, the spontaneous discussions. They also reported that, I say they, I mean a lot of you reported that the guys doing the sales teams are struggling because it's difficult to get engagement with customers, and the lack of physical events, which is hampering business development. And of course, this will all have an impact in the future. So the next slide. No, you've jumped two. So then question was how their revenues are holding up. So a third are saying that they feel pretty secure for the moment. A further third are anticipating problems in 6 to 12 months' time. And roughly a quarter are already seeing some impact on their reduced income and sales. So for me, that's a bit of a surprise that things are hitting quite so quickly. The general perception is that we're going to have problems in 6 to 12 months' time, and that's when we're going to need to adjust. But of course, on the commercial side of the business, some sectors were already having difficulty. So the illustration, the oil price is turning negative, really hitting the oil and gas industry. And one or two companies mentioned Brexit as an issue. We know the OneWeb, the refinancing of OneWeb, that's impacting some. And some concern over the lack of member state government support and accessing it, even though a great deal has been done in that respect. So the next slide. So then we're asking, you know, what can the European institutions do to help? So 14% were looking at increase of loans and grants. We'll come back to this because I think financing really is an issue, and I'm interested to hear your views on that. 60%, full 60% are basically saying you'll carry on, but try to do better. You know, reduce the delays, continue the calls, issue more calls, give opportunities. And overall, and I have direct experience of this, ESA seem to be doing a really good job at trying to overcome that. I mean, I recently had a milestone payment that I submitted that was paid in about a week, which was incredibly quick, and processing of contracts and paperwork is also really speeding up. So I think ESA are doing a good job, and a lot of the respondents recognize that and cited ESA as doing a good job. But then the concern really is around the EU space budget and securing that, and we know that there are issues around that budget, pressures to reduce it even before the crisis. With the crisis, of course, that pressure is going to come even greater. So we're tracking that, and hopefully we'll be able to release information. And there's a letter which is being prepared at the moment, which is further reinforcing the interest to maintain that budget. So again, messaging to ESA doing a great job. Could do with some online teleco facilities, and maybe for support to SMEs. I'm not really going to judge whether SMEs are more or less affected. I know, you know, Airbus is the biggest company, is very severely affected. So I think that was the last slide, wasn't it, Natasha? Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the first flavor of what we're getting. So now I'd like to hand over to our first speaker. I'd like to ask, before going into a conversation, I'd like each speaker just to give a short perception of the situation as they see it, how it's affected, how they've reacted, and how they will be reacting. So maybe Lucy, I can turn to you first and ask you to give us your views on the crisis and how it's impacting on you at Spotted. Lucy? Have we lost
Is that
Lucy?
better? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, okay, all right. So afternoon, everybody. So I guess the first thing is that myself, I'm working from my basement, and my colleagues are doing the same, or working from home as everybody else is. In terms of the COVID situation, I think it sort of crept up. We watched from afar. I was actually in Singapore the first week of February, as England went from being, you know, not a hot country to suddenly going back home to England being a country where people were concerned about the situation. In terms of transitioning to working from home, that was technically quite easy. Much of our work is done in the cloud anyway, and we had already all the tools that we needed. I think things that I had to be careful of is that, you know, do people have a proper desk or a proper chair to sit on? You know, some of our home offices are not set up for sitting there for 8 hours a day and working comfortably and safety at. And I think in terms of projects, existing work, we were able to continue and to deliver on time the projects we had going, and projects that were coming down the pipeline, we still see them coming. Stuff hasn't been, maybe a little delay, but stuff hasn't been wiped off the plate. But I do see in sort of 6 to 12 months time, will some of the commercial stuff that we've been working on, that we've been pushing for ages, is COVID going to be another excuse for delay? Or is it going to be the opportunity for people to say, okay, we are going to try remote monitoring because we're on reduced staffing levels and we don't want to send people out and about? I have yet to see which way people will fall on that one. I think I'm in a country where we're quite fortunate in terms of the financial support that is being offered from the government, but there are some technical issues with accessing that. So yeah, all in all, I think we're pretty aligned to the slides that you know, you showed there, Jeff. You know, there's some stupid stuff. Personally, my hair is too long. I'm not smart. And I have a silly work schedule where I work from 6 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning, and then I homeschool my 3 kids till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I hand over to my husband and I work again. So, but we'll all be doing crazy stuff like that.
Thanks, Lucy. Recognize a lot of things in there, and fortunately I don't have my children are big, so I don't have children to cope with, but those who have children to deal with, as well as everything else, I think it's very, very, very difficult. And your point about the furniture, yeah, we've got a little bit of that, you know, where setups in the office are not transcribed into home working. Great, thanks. So now let me go to a sort of a more medium-sized company. Cloudfero in Poland has been growing quite successfully. So I'll ask Maciej, CEO, to maybe say a few words about how he perceives the situation. Maciej, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Do you hear me? No, I just unmuted. Yes, good. So to put this with perspective, we are now some 70 people company, and I think that something has changed, some not. Generally, when preparing for this cafe, I looked at the dates, and the first moves we made on the 26th of February. We then decided to stop travel, to put people coming back from abroad on quarantine, and to move meetings, outside meetings, to telcos. And only 2 weeks later, we asked our department managers to move people to home office. So it was developing quite quickly, and now something between 80 to 90% of people are at home office. The technical teams are divided into 2 non-overlapping groups, so that they don't have contact one to another. And basically, moving people at home to homes was rather easy because we are an online company. Anyhow, we are providing cloud services. But we observed that it causes additional challenges. I would say that the managerial level, people are more tired than normally. Some managerial tasks are, yeah, you can do it quickly by talking in the kitchen or normally, or you know, just meeting somebody on the corridor. Now you have to organize a telco, you have to write emails, and you can see it in the work that people do. We don't have anybody infected, which is quite obvious because the rate of infection in Poland currently is half a person for 1,000 people. So there is, if it's not for bad luck, there is little chance you are going to be infected. Since we had new projects, we were still hiring people, and this was a very interesting experience to introduce remote onboarding procedures with sending laptops via couriers. We even onboarded somebody from France. The difference is that all the meetings were done via telcos. We had a custom to talk in person to everybody we hired, but now it's just not possible. We of course added special communication to our customers. I think I can put a link, an example link to the chat, so you can see how it looks like. We added some special. We added this communication not only on our Cloudflare side, but also at Creodias, which we operate. And generally, we move on. But as I said, some things seem to be a little bit more complicated or time-consuming. But we hope that from the point of view of our customers, nothing has changed. We just deliver services as usual. It anyhow was always an online service. We were even able to phase in new projects. Just at the very height of pandemic, we opened a new version of Code DE for German DLR. We even obtained a prize from Polish Agency for Industrial Development, not being there and not even knowing that it happened at the first place. So you can operate. You can operate. Let's see how it's going to run in the longer run.
Thanks, Maciej. Yeah, I can also relate to that, what you said about the travel. I was actually due to be in Washington the second week in March, and I decided the week before, the way things were going, that I was pulling out. And the Americans couldn't understand why I wasn't going. I mean, they really didn't. They really thought, I was playing around and not by not traveling out there. I think they understand now, but at the time they hadn't caught up with it. So that's two very different stories. I think we're lucky to be in a sector where we can carry on working, although we see problems. It's not entirely true for Pierre-Alain, I think. So Pierre-Alain, I'll let you please say your perception on the situation.
So first of all, as you are aware, in Airbus there is Airbus Commercial, the home, the mother company, and then there is Airbus Defence and Space and Airbus Helicopter. Myself, I belong to Airbus Defence and Space, and the situation is not at all in the three companies. And as you said, for Airbus Commercial, here the situation is quite a catastrophe, but it is a catastrophe all over the world. Just be aware that there was more flights in the 60s than today. So 50 years ago, there were more planes in the sky than today. So we are in the aeronautic business. It is worse than 50 years ago. So there would be an impact on the air company, all the Air France, KLM, all these companies will face some difficulties. And of course, for Airbus, the number of aircraft that we are selling will decrease a lot. There are some estimation, 20%, 50%, 60%. Nobody knows, in fact. But it is true that for traveling, for aircraft companies and air industry, this is we never saw such a crisis. But in Airbus Defence and Space, and mainly in intelligence, it is not at all the same. Within intelligence, so we provide data, optical, radar data, but also services using this data. And in fact, the situation was, it was funny because we took the decision, so the government took the decision to freeze everything on a Friday. And for us, 5 days later, 95% of the people were working from home. So it means that in this Earth observation business, we are quite digital. And the 5% we are not working from home, it was the people who has to be locally in order to turn the system on or to connect with secure communication and things like that. So everything dealing with programming of data, we were able in 5 days to do it from home. And for the services, it was the same, except for specific defense services where we have to be, it was not possible to have a secure communication from home. So then I have to tell you that it was, we were, I assume it is perhaps the same in all the company, Earth observation company, but we are digital and we are able to adapt quite fast. Concerning the business, here I have to say that it was different, definitely. For example, in Africa, all the business collapsed in 15 days. The meeting we were supposed to have, so we transferred them in WebEx. Even with the WebEx, it was difficult to join the people, and much more than that, they all cancel the discussion we have in order to provide data and things like that. And mainly, I have to put some people in unemployment, partial unemployment, in order to, why? Because there was not enough activity. And versus that, in Europe, and mainly in institutions and in government, in France, in Germany, and with ESA and European Commission, here the people, they have to to produce a lot. There was a lot of discussion. We had a lot of requests. The customer was asking us a lot of things. Usually it was for free. They were asking us, or sometimes we reached to sell them cost. But okay, it's a time of crisis, and we are there to support our customers. So, and I know that the people, they were working all the day during the weekend for business in order to prepare the future, that we have to take vacation. But even during the vacation, the people dealing with the institution were working. So it was quite crazy. I remember in the team, we have the team who were on partial unemployment or even some unemployment, and the other were working at 100, 110, 150%. So it was quite a crazy time. But to conclude rapidly, for me, what we have shown is that the EO data and services and the EU players, I think we really demonstrated, because it's not only Airbus, but I have seen with some of our friends, we demonstrated the reactivity or adaptation capability and value added in time of unpredicted crisis. And so I think that we succeed to demonstrate that at the end to the institutional customers. And what I hope is that clearly European Commission, as the main states, the parliamentarians, they will remember it when they will vote for the next MFF budget, and specifically for the space budget. That's all.
Thanks, Pierre-Alain. That's a good holiday, a good message. You mentioned vacations there. Can you tell me what vacations are?
You can have a nice vacation between your bedroom, and myself. I have a house, so during my vacation, I was able to cook and to garden. So
and to garden, yeah, I know you have a nice garden. That's great. Well, you talked about having to sort of I don't know if you put people on waiting time. I guess you've not gone through a licenciement. What were that, the sales teams? That was the message we were getting back from some of our interviews.
So we put partial unemployment. So it is partial unemployment. This is what the French state, and I think there is something in Germany and in Spain for that also. It's not the same word, but it is quite the same. So people are not working during 2 or 3 days per week, but they are paid 80% of their salary or 70% of their salary.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Maciej, did you need to avail yourself of many schemes, or were you able to keep going sort of 100%?
We are going 100%. I would say okay. The business hasn't changed. It's based on subscription and on long-term contract. So basically, nothing has changed. And in the shorter run, people are interested in online, because you have to go online to operate at all. So it opens new possibilities for us. It's only in the longer run, but I mean very longer run is we think how Copernicus budget is going to look like, how general budgets in public and in business are going to look like. But this is more a question of next 2 years or this kind of perspective. So you really don't know if it's more a chance or if it's more a threat. This is the situation that is now developing. So now we are just moving on. And in terms of sales, I would say that there is a lot of work, because fortunately, for example, ESA keeps releasing new ITTs, and it's not only ESA. So I would say that organizations like this reacted very responsibly, keeping businesses to just to run normally, if they can operationally. But as I said, we are an online company anyhow, so
Yeah.
so we can move on.
And Lucy, I would imagine it's the same for you, but can you, maybe in addressing that, can you also say, have you adapted your sort of products, what you're offering? Because it's a small company. I know you were experimenting with a lot of different types of services. So have you seen any change in that respect?
I think we're still offering the same services. It's slightly different, the mix that we push, perhaps, in terms of where we're focusing. Some things are more relevant in this day and age, and particularly with the number of open calls around technologies and projects to support society through the pandemic. And there's lots that Earth observation can do on that side. So I would say that the answer to your question is yes. You know, we are pursuing some things more actively than others in light of what's going on. It just makes good business sense in that same way.
Yeah, I mean the pace of change has been very high for some time now, but this is more than just a change. This is a shock, isn't it? That we've got. One of the things that we touched on it, and I think Maciej, you talked about the difficulty of onboarding people. What's your I mean, I assume that any recruitment now is on hold, but is that the case, or are you looking for particular skills now?
Basically, we had a recruitment plan for the first 2 quarters, and we hired most of the people, but most of them during the pandemic, so it was not on hold.
Yeah.
Now we are still looking for 1 or 2 persons. So you can do it. It's only a little bit more complicated, or it's changed, because normally the final decisions you make after a person-to-person meeting. Yeah, by you I mean the responsible manager. Yeah, so now you have to make those decisions after reading, after online meeting. There is just a slightly less amount of information you can get during the process, because you just cannot meet the person. But these processes can be performed during such situation, and evidently we are doing it. I assume there are also other people doing it, because we don't see in our line of business, which is related also to IT, not only to Earth observation, we don't see that there is much more new potential employees in the market. It's maybe there is a little more movement in junior positions, but senior specialists, they were not moved by this.
Yeah, I mean, we've been discussing skills quite a lot. We have Monica online, who's no doubt taking notes around that. You've all moved people out. Do you have plans for moving back? We've had a discussion around this and have basically sort of put on hold any idea to move back to the office. I think there's going to be a lot more. Well, I mean, everywhere there's going to be a lot more remote working. What are your thoughts on sort of the process of moving back? Do you have any visions on that now, or do you is it just too uncertain at the moment to work with? Pierre-Alain, maybe first.
Yeah, so we are working on having the people back at the office, and you know that in France, as soon as last Monday, it was authorized to come back to the office. But we have we within the office of Toulouse, we have a plan, and we will extend the people two months and a half to have all the people back. And the main question we have now is we will not work as we worked before. For example, myself at head of sales, when the people were asking to work from home, well, I answered them, okay, when you are coming back from a long travel, you can stay at home, but I want you at the office, because if you don't come at the office, I don't see you anymore. I have said that I will change my mind, and I will authorize some people to work regularly from home, because myself, I experience it. It is, I think that from home, I am working better, and sometimes I am more efficient than working in the office. So it is more than the office, but perhaps I'm sure that we will have another view on working from home.
Yeah, that's very good. And Lucy, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, one element is the physical environment to go back to. So we work from a coast base. So at the moment in the UK, the advice is if you cannot work from home, you can start going to work as from Wednesday this week. That's not the case for Spot It. So there's no discussion of us going back at the moment. I mean, I have to say, as a working mum, I have always made use of working from home as a way to combine everything. So I've always been flexible about my employees doing that. So that's not going to be different. I think another thing to be really aware of is, who's coming in on public transport, and is that fair? If someone's got to come in, will there be a bus that can fit them in? Because now the bus capacity is what, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5 of normal. So at the moment, everybody working for Spot It has their own transport. But I think that's a relevant question for a lot of companies. So that's great if you've got a safe spot for someone to come and work, but they're going to run the gauntlet to get to work. We have some schemes whereby here in Oxfordshire, the County Council is buying bicycles for employees in order for them to be able to cycle to work as opposed to taking public transport. And I think in Spot It, the challenge would be we're quite good at working remotely. What is the structure to bring us back to have time together? And it might be that we now need to, as Pierre was saying, instead of saying, well, everybody basically works from the office 80% of the time, so we don't need to structure time together because we're physically in the same location. I think for us, we may start to create times when people will be in the office location or a particular location, maybe it's not the office, for structural time together. That's something I see happening, but we haven't clarified where we're going with that.
You can save on office costs while spending on sort of meeting facilities on a once a month basis or something like that.
I mean, different companies are going to do it different ways, but certainly I see that we'll no longer rely on people just being in the office to have a general conversation. We'll perhaps have to structure that somehow.
Okay, thanks. If you want to comment, Mathieu, but in the meantime, I'm just we haven't got any questions that I can see on the chat, unless I've missed anything. If anyone has any questions they want to put forward, or simply just contribute to the discussion, because it may not be questions, it may be personal experiences and views. But I'll let Mathieu respond to that question, and then if anyone wants to take the floor, just indicate that in the chat.
Okay, so we are just in the middle of inventing a tactics how to move people back, because this is something we would like to do. The problem is that we have to do it according to current governmental regulations that assume bigger social distancing. So basically, you can put twice less people in the same space in the office. So this is one thing. And the second thing is that we would like to do in such a way that to keep non-overlapping groups, because one has to be anyhow safe and to think about business continuity. So I must say this is quite it's not yet clear how we are going to do this, but we would like to start moving people back. I must say that the lack of personal contact, you can feel it in just day-to-day communication, and on the other hand, I think that this can also affect business development. So and on the other hand, I assume that nobody is going to tell us at a certain moment, now it's safe, you can go back to your previous operations, to your previous mode of operations. So we have to invent effective, responsible, safe way of doing this on our own. I don't assume that anybody will tell us, now that's it, everything is normal.
No, I think it'll be some time before we get even close, and what will be the new normal? I think that's the big question we're all asking. Giovanni, you wanted to make a comment? I'll give the floor to you.
Well, thank you. Well, I share a lot of the comments our colleagues made. Have all sympathy for the problem we got, and I'm happy how our industry responded to the situation. I have to put in front two aspects. One is that, well, as you know, Planetech Italia is based in southern Italy. I had a check of how many times I waste in traveling in the past time. For example, I spend about 14-20 hours per month in a flight. That means more or less 80 hours of my life traveling. And this is an advantage. And this advantage is bigger for Planetech because in some way the disadvantage we have with some friends and competitors that are closer to Brussels or Rome for Italy, they have a lot of advantage that is completely remote. The second aspect, but this was also emerging from the consideration of our colleagues, is that there is a difference between remote working and smart working. And to understand how better implement smart working and how you can implement this in our business is a tricky question that we are starting organizing. And secondly, for what concerns reopening, you know that in Italy the situation was particularly severe. I decided at the very beginning of all this situation to stay in a safe mode up to July 4 at least. This also to give comfort to our people to organize as good as they can. Don't have any week the idea that the next week they will reopen. We have a lot of stop and go in Italy on this. Just this.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And I think you've already also mentioned to me the experience of training people during the onboarding people during the lockdown, which was a challenge. Claudia, I'm not sure. Do you have a question you want to or a comment you want to make? I'm not quite clear from your chat.
Hi, no, it was just a comment because everybody was just pointing out to the positives of people working remotely. And my comment was that perhaps there are a lot of hidden opportunity costs in the fact that you don't talk to colleagues in an unstructured way. You don't get to just, have a coffee, bump into someone in the corridor, talk about what they're doing, see what they're up to. There's a lot that comes in terms of like really useful information that comes from this, in my experience. And probably one should take this into account and create opportunities somehow for this to happen remotely. It was just a question, comment.
Yes, yeah. I mean, absolutely. The opportunity, the cost of not having that sort of social interaction. We have we're small enough that we can have everybody online in one call each day, and we do that every day where everyone is just exchanging on their latest news and what they're doing. Jeff, you're talking about a new launchpad facility. Are you able to say more about that?
Hi, yeah, it's not a new thing really. It was built, the UK ESA business development ambassadors built it on top of the ARTES program, but there were very small 6-month feasibility studies, not a huge amount of money, 25k of funding, but in a non-COVID sense, it was really useful for us to test an idea out, speak to a potential client and customer and get some really positive feedback. But then if we see it in the context of COVID, then I think for micro SMEs, where money may be drying up, I mean, these small grants, that the application process wasn't too strenuous, a small application, just focusing on a really good idea, and get things moving, sort of almost in preparation for those larger funding calls, which take a lot more time to develop, and people could then look towards in a post-COVID world. So I mean, I'm just encouraged to hear that ESA are speeding up their procurement process, and I think funding schemes like that could work really well in the situation we're in now.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I mean, Lucy, the question of schools, I think, is on many people's minds, and is fundamental to getting things back working again. I think it's interesting seeing the different approaches around Europe, and some are postponing completely, some are taking the younger ones back to school, some are taking the older ones back to school. Maybe some more. It doesn't give a good impression of being based on good analysis, that different conclusions are being come to. At least that's my impression. I think we're coming to the end. I'll give the three speakers maybe just one last chance to say any final thoughts or conclusions, and then we'll close the cafe. So we'll go in the same order again. Well, let me leave the last word to Lucy. Pierre-Alain, you have maybe the first comment.
Yes, first, thank you. And I would just remember you, Darwin. Darwin said that the one who are surviving, this is not the strongest or the one who are the most clever. This is the one who are adapting, who are surviving. And clearly, I think that, this is what we are doing in our company. We will adapt and we will survive. I hope for you the same.
Thanks, Pierre-Alain. Maciej?
I would also like to thank you, and I would like to advertise, we also provide some free resources for potential COVID-19 research and computing resources and imagery. So I will put an web page with this in the chat. Maybe it can be useful for somebody. So as our small something to the common good, I hope.
Great.
Thanks.
Great opportunistic. And Lucy. Hello?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. So, I think we've talked a lot about the business side. I think this is going to have long-term socioeconomic impacts as well, which is going to reverberate again on businesses, mental health, secondary health issues, all sorts of things. So we're going to have to be talking about this in one format or another for many, many, many months to come. And, we're going to have to support each other. There is a, social cohesion and cohesion among us as a team is going to be really, really important, supporting each other.
Absolutely agree. I mean, we will come back to this subject again. We'll be conducting our survey in the autumn, and we'll look at the sort of more direct impacts. And it might be good to have a further exchange like this, maybe not on the basis of the figures, but more again on the softer issues that people are dealing with. I think it's been a really good, it's really interesting discussion. I'll just say that our next EOcafe will be in 2 weeks' time. At that cafe, we have Steve Coulson, who will be talking about the global development program that he has been piloting through ESA. So he'll give us an update on that. We may expand that, but at the moment that's the plan. We're trying to have a regular agenda for the EOcafe every 2 weeks, as you may well have noticed. So Steve will be in 2 weeks' time, and then there'll be another one 2 weeks' time after that. We really appreciate your feedback on this. So if you have any comments, and particularly any suggestions, any topics you'd like to see sort of brought up and discussed in the EOcafe, then let us know. And you have on the screen a link to Mentimeter, which we use as a communication tool. So please, if you can just take 2 minutes just to reflect and fill that in and give us any hints or suggestions of what you'd like to see in the future, or what we can do to improve the EOcafe. At which point I thank again our 3 speakers. Thank you very much for the time you've spent and the ideas you've been putting forward, the thoughts, and wish everyone a good rest of the week and a good weekend that's coming. And any vacations coming up, please enjoy them.
Thank you.
Bye all. Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.
Ciao.
Of course, if someone wants to stay, feel free. We will continue our coffee.
Yes, why not, Natasha?
Let's see who has time.
No one wants to admit to having time.
No, in fact, I was just trying to memorize the code for the Mentimeter.
It's there,
Okay.
Monica.
Yeah, I see. I was trying to go there directly. Mentimeter.
82, 22, 27.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then when it disappears, it's
82, 22, 27.
Yeah.
We really do appreciate any thoughts you may have.
Yeah.
Suggestions.
I will try, because I think that it's what is really great, the scenario that is really great, it's when you have just like a general talk, and then if we could include a few minutes of some company, small or bigger, from different, each time from another country or from another environment, just like an additional picture, because we don't meet each other anymore. So if somebody doesn't come and tell us, listen, we've got this and that, we will not know it.
Yeah, I mean, it's from both from a sales point of view and a social point of view, isn't it? I mean, with the first EOcafe, we said leave cameras off, and we realised that it was a shame.
Yeah.
We're missing a lot of the opportunity of the chance to sort of see each other again and remind each other what we look like.
Yeah.
Good or bad, of course. You get to look at me, which is not good. But,
always good, always
Oh,
good.
maybe you enjoy my Saturn rocket. I mean,
yeah.
really pleased with that.
It looks very nice, and I don't know.
It's Lego. It's a Lego rocket, and
it's a Lego. Oh, great!
Lego space station just in front of it. And ESA have just started selling the space station, so a little advertisement there. It really is good fun. Not for kids, but it's good fun.
We will finish, but creating a special stages for the meeting.
Yeah, we should try and see what we can do.
Yeah. But I don't know if you have had the opportunity to watch Metropolitan Opera Home Gala, where every performer played or sang from his home. It was, I have to say that interiors were as interesting as the I loved it.
It's true, yes.
There's been lots of comments on social media about bookcases and what's in people's bookcases and sitting behind them in these remote calls. Yeah, I see a good bookcase behind Jeff.
Yeah.
But luckily, it's far enough away that you can't read the titles.
Oh, I'm sure
I have the Copernicus for Regions brochure up there.
Roya would be happy.
And some very dated computer programming manuals.
They'll have antique value one day.
Okay, so I'll say bye and thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye, Monica.
Bye. Nice to talk to you.
Bye, Maciek.
Okay.
I want to leave it. Yeah. It was nice to see you all.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
I'm leaving too. Bye. This is exactly this direct contact that we lack now.
That's the whole purpose of the EOcafe, so we're happy you enjoyed.
Yeah. Okay, again, bye.
Cheers, Maciej. Thank you very much. Cheers, Carmen.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
See you again soon.
Bye, Jeff.
We'll close the cafe now, so bye to everyone else. Ingo, Ash, and see you soon.
Hi, Ingo.
Bye.